You're here because you already sensed the shift. The system that kept your shelves full wasn't designed to last, and it's cracking faster than people are willing to admit. When supply lines collapse, food doesn't disappear. It changes ownership. It becomes leverage. It becomes a weapon. And the people who survive aren't the strongest. They're the ones who prepared before anyone else even realized the game had changed. Most families stock their pantries with blind faith in expiration dates, believing those tiny printed numbers dictate survival. That's why they lose. A prepper operates differently. You operate differently. You measure value by stability, density, longevity, and control. You choose foods that don't bow to time, temperature swings, or chaos. Foods that outlive systems, outlive crises, and outlive panic. Foods that remain operational when everything else fails. What you're about to build is not a pantry. It's a strategic reserve, a vault of edible assets no collapse can neutralize. 12 forever foods engineered by nature and proven by centuries of conflict and scarcity. 13,000 years of human survival compressed into a single doctrine. Secure the foods that don't die. Every item on this list is permanent. Not long-lasting, not good for a few years, but effectively immortal when handled with discipline. Each one is a tactical advantage disguised as something ordinary. And once they're in your control, the fear of running out becomes irrelevant. You don't fear the dark when you own the night. You don't fear the famine when you own the foods that ignore time itself. This is where your real preparedness begins. Not with gear, not with weapons. With the one resource every hostile environment tests first. Your ability to feed yourself when the world stops feeding you. The first forever food is the anchor of every serious prepper's supply chain. Raw honey, the only natural food that defies time itself. You secure it not because it's sweet, but because it's immortal. Honey does not spoil, does not rot, and does not surrender to bacteria. Archaeologists have opened ancient tombs and found honey still perfectly edible after thousands of years. That is not a coincidence. That is chemistry working in your favor. Low moisture, high acidity, natural antimicrobials. A built-in preservation system no factory can replicate. In a collapse, you need more than calories. You need adaptability. Honey gives you that. It fuels your body during long periods of alertness when sleep becomes a luxury. It stabilizes your energy when every movement must be calculated and efficient. It repairs your throat when smoke, cold air, or contaminated environments strip it raw. And in a world where medical access disappears overnight, honey becomes an antiseptic, a wound sealant, and a field-ready treatment for burns and infections. One substance, multiple functions, zero degradation. Most foods demand protection, refrigeration, rotation, airtight storage. Honey only demands respect. Keep it sealed, keep it clean. If it crystallizes, that's not decay. That's evolution. Warm it gently and it returns to its liquid state without losing a single ounce of value. Nothing else in your pantry will treat you this generously. Strategically, honey is also a trade asset. When your neighbor's sugar, snacks, and comfort foods expire, yours won't. In a scarcity economy, immortality becomes currency. A single jar can secure goodwill, alliances, or tactical favors when tensions rise. You don't need to advertise it. You just need to know it's there. Silent, eternal, waiting. When the grid goes down, you want foods that remain loyal. Honey never betrays you. It doesn't weaken. It doesn't fail. It stands guard across decades, a golden constant in a world where everything else collapses. The second forever food is white rice, simple on the surface, but strategically essential in every long-term survival doctrine. Most people underestimate it because it's cheap, common, and quiet. But that is exactly why it becomes a weapon in your arsenal. White rice isn't just a staple, it's a foundation. It survives decades when sealed against moisture and oxygen. It delivers dense, reliable calories, and it forms the backbone of countless meals when variety becomes a psychological shield against collapse fatigue. Your objective during a prolonged disruption isn't luxury, it's endurance. White rice gives you that without draining your resources. It requires minimal equipment to cook, minimal fuel to prepare, and minimal space to store. One compact bucket becomes months of operational stability. That's why every military ration system, every off-grid culture, and every long-term expedition relies on some form of rice. The world doesn't choose it by coincidence. It chooses it because survival isn't poetic, it's mathematical. This food doesn't negotiate with time. Properly sealed in mylar with oxygen absorbers, white rice becomes a 25 and 30-year asset. Not a gamble, not a maybe good for a few more months, but a long-term reserve that stands firm while other grains degrade. Brown rice fails, oils go rancid, nutrients break down. But white rice stays clean, stable, operational. When everything else collapses into chaos, this one remains predictable. But its real power shows during stress. When panic stripping hits your city, people grab canned goods, perishables, and trendy survival foods. They overlook the workhorse, the one that keeps you fed when the shelves stay empty for years, not weeks. In barter situations, rice becomes leverage. In grid-down kitchens, it becomes the neutral base that transforms scraps into meals. In psychological warfare against hunger, it becomes routine, a stabilizer when everything else is uncertain. White rice is not exciting. It is not glamorous. It is not a story you brag about. But it is the food that ensures you stay functional, clear-headed, and fueled long after the unprepared run out of options. In survival, reliability is dominance, and nothing is more reliable than this. The third forever food is dried beans, the silent protein reserve that turns a vulnerable household into a fortified stronghold. In normal times, people overlook beans because they're slow to cook, unremarkable, and unfashionable. But in collapse logic, none of that matters. What matters is that dried beans are one of the rare foods that deliver protein, fiber, minerals, and long-term stability in a single compact form. They don't spoil when sealed correctly. They don't lose operational value. They simply wait, dormant, inert, loyal, until the moment you need them to perform. In survival mode, protein becomes the first nutrient at risk. Perishables vanish. Meat becomes scarce or impossible to source without dangerous exposure. Hunting drains energy and time. But beans eliminate that vulnerability. They provide steady strength during extended stress cycles when your body works harder, sleeps less, and burns through reserves faster than you expect. One pot can fuel a day's worth of vigilance, patrol, or relocation. They keep you sharp when weakness becomes a tactical threat. Dried beans also absorb water, expanding into several times their volume. That's food multiplication, a strategic advantage in rationing scenarios. You convert minimal physical storage into maximum edible output. When cooked with rice, you unlock a complete amino acid profile, creating a meal that can sustain you indefinitely with almost no external support. The untrained see beans as primitive. The informed see them as biochemical insurance. They also become currency when systems fail. In barter networks, protein is always in deficit. When others run out of canned goods and processed foods, your sealed store of beans remains untouched by time, insects, or oxidation. You control one of the most in-demand survival nutrients without depending on refrigeration, electricity, or fragile supply chains. The only requirement is discipline. Store them dry, sealed, oxygen-free. Do this once, and they will outlive every crisis on the horizon. Dried beans are not glamorous, but in a world stripped to its essentials, they are brute force nourishment. The kind that keeps you alive when endurance is the only metric that matters. The fourth forever food is salt. The oldest preservative, the most overlooked survival asset, and the one resource every collapsing society ends up fighting over. Salt is not food in the traditional sense, yet without it, your food system dies. Your body fails. Your ability to preserve meat, cure hides, disinfect wounds, and maintain electrolyte balance collapses. Salt is more than a seasoning, it is infrastructure. And unlike almost every item on your shelf, salt does not degrade, it does not expire, it does not lose potency. It is eternal, and that makes it dangerous in the right hands, and priceless in yours. In a grid-down scenario, refrigeration becomes a memory. Fresh meat becomes a liability unless you can preserve it. Salt neutralizes that vulnerability instantly. It lets you cure protein, dry it, store it, and transport it safely without power. With enough salt, you can turn a single kill into months of shelf-stable rations. Without it, you're staring at a ticking clock, while predators, human and otherwise, close in on the scent of what you can't save. Salt also stabilizes you physiologically. In high-stress survival, you sweat more, drink less, eat inconsistently, and burn through your electrolytes at a dangerous rate. Most people ignore this until dizziness, fatigue, and confusion set in, symptoms that get you injured or get you targeted. A pinch of salt in water recalibrates your system instantly. A small stash in your pack prevents performance drop-offs when you can't afford them. What makes salt strategically lethal is its trade value. Once grocery stores fail, salt becomes a top-tier commodity. Historically, it has functioned as currency, wages, and political leverage. In modern collapse, nothing changes. Most households have a few ounces. You'll have pounds. That difference is control. That difference decides who negotiates and who begs. Store it dry, store it in bulk, store it without fear, because salt does not betray you. It remains ready across centuries, untouched by time. Where other supplies weaken, diminish, or degrade, this one stands like stone, solid, permanent, absolute. The fifth forever food is dried lentils, the fast response protein source that outperforms almost every other legume in a crisis. Where dried beans demand long soaking, long cooking, and significant fuel, lentils cut through all of that. They cook quickly, absorb flavors efficiently, and provide high-density nourishment with minimal resource expenditure. In a survival environment, that single detail becomes a tactical advantage. Fuel is finite. Time is finite. Noise discipline is critical. Lentils reduce all three. What sets lentils apart from other long-term staples is their operational efficiency. They deliver protein, iron, and slow-burning carbohydrates without the digestive stress that heavier legumes create. When stress levels spike and your body runs hot with adrenaline, you need food that keeps you stable, not sluggish. Lentils provide clean energy, the kind that supports movement, planning, and night vigilance without crashing your system. When cooked with rice, they become a complete protein, a meal pattern that can sustain you indefinitely without nutritional gaps. Their shelf life is nearly unlimited when sealed properly. Moisture is their only enemy, and oxygen exposure is a slow threat, not a fatal one. Once stored in mylar with absorbers, lentils become a decades-long reserve that will not rot, mold, spoil, or degrade. They sit quietly in your pantry like a dormant army, waiting for deployment. This predictability is what inexperienced preppers overlook and what seasoned operators rely on. Predictability keeps you alive, and in barter dynamics, lentils strike the perfect balance, valuable enough to trade, common enough that you don't draw unwanted attention. Protein becomes scarce during extended disruption. Meat disappears, eggs spoil, dairy collapses. But you'll be the one with a renewable protein reserve packaged in silence, concealed behind sealed bags, immune to decay. Lentils aren't glamorous. They don't sell survival courses or appear in dramatic prepper thumbnails. But they do something more important. They keep you operational when the environment turns hostile. They cook fast when fire risks detection. They fuel you when fatigue becomes an enemy. They stabilize you when hunger becomes a distraction. In survival, speed and simplicity are force multipliers. Lentils give you both. And in a world falling apart, efficiency is the closest thing to power. The sixth forever food is pure cane sugar. A substance most people treat as a luxury, but in a survival environment, it becomes a biochemical fuel source with an almost infinite lifespan. Sugar doesn't spoil. It doesn't rot. Microbes can't colonize it. Time can't weaken it. As long as you keep it dry, it remains operational for centuries. That alone makes it a strategic asset, but its real power emerges when everything around you begins to collapse. Sugar is instant energy, not the slow, heavy burn of grains or legumes, but a direct, rapid supply of glucose your body can weaponize immediately. During long watches, sudden exertion, rapid evasive movement, or cold weather stress, your system needs fast response calories. In a grid-down world with inconsistent meals, that need becomes constant. A spoonful of sugar can keep you alert. A small stash in your pack can prevent collapses in energy that expose you to danger. It is the simplest, most reliable chemical ignition for the human body. Its value increases when medical access disappears. Sugar works as a wound-packing agent for certain field treatments, drawing moisture away from contaminated tissue and creating an environment hostile to bacteria. Mixed with honey, it becomes an improvised antiseptic paste used in battlefields long before modern medicine existed. It's not pretty. It's not ideal. But in a collapse, ideal doesn't matter. Survival does. Sugar is also a binding force in food preparation. It stabilizes baked goods, fuels fermentation, preserves fruits, and extends the life of other foods. When ingredients are scarce and every scrap counts, sugar transforms simple rations into morale-building assets. Never underestimate the psychological impact of even small comfort foods when the world outside is hostile. The mind is part of the survival system, and sugar helps maintain it. And like salt, sugar becomes currency. People underestimate longevity. They stock up on trendy foods with short expiration dates. They forget that sugar, plain, white, unrefined, outlives civilizations. When desperation spreads, you'll hold a product that everyone wants but few possess in quantity. Power shifts toward the one who controls stable resources. Sugar asks almost nothing of you. Store it dry. Keep it sealed. Don't let moisture compromise it. Do that, and it will serve you longer than any piece of equipment you own. The seventh forever food is pure maple syrup, a dense, resilient, multi-purpose resource that functions as food, medicine, and biochemical fuel. Most households treat it as a breakfast accessory, unaware that real maple syrup, not the synthetic corn syrup blends, is a survival compound with virtually unlimited shelf life when stored correctly. Its high sugar concentration makes microbial growth impossible. Its viscosity protects it from oxidation. Time passes, seasons shift, systems collapse, and the syrup remains exactly what it was the day you sealed it. What makes maple syrup tactically valuable is its versatility under pressure. Unlike dry staples, it requires no fuel, no cooking, no prep. You consume it straight when your body is failing, when cold drains your energy, when dehydration blurs your focus, or when hunger hits during a night watch. It delivers fast, clean glucose with mineral support, potassium, manganese, zinc, nutrients that stabilize you when fatigue becomes a tactical weakness. In situations where you cannot risk fire, cannot spare water, or cannot make noise, maple syrup becomes silent sustenance, but its utility extends beyond calories. Maple syrup acts as a preservative for certain foods, a trade commodity with exceptionally high demand, and a psychological stabilizer. In prolonged emergencies, morale collapses before resources do. A teaspoon of sweetness can reset a spiraling mind, especially when every other element of life becomes cold, harsh, and mechanical. That mental reset isn't softness, it's strategy. A clear mind makes better decisions. A better decision keeps you alive. In barter networks, maple syrup becomes leverage. It's rare, recognizable, and universally desired. When synthetic sweeteners vanish and cheap syrups expire, your supply remains untouched, gaining perceived value each month the crisis drags on. Control sweetness during scarcity, and you control negotiation. Its storage demands are minimal. Glass if possible, dark conditions, steady temperatures. Crystals forming at the bottom are not decay. They are concentration. Warm the container, and the syrup reverts effortlessly to its original state. No loss in quality, no loss in function. Maple syrup is more than food. It's controlled energy, controlled morale, controlled trade value, all condensed into a substance that does not die. When other households run out of flavor, calories, and adaptability, your supply stands firm, silent, stable, ready. The eighth forever food is powdered milk. Lightweight, compact, and engineered for longevity when sealed away from oxygen and moisture. Most people dismiss it as a backup for baking or coffee. But in a collapse, it becomes far more, a portable dairy system that needs no refrigeration, no livestock, no supply chain. With proper storage, powdered milk survives for decades, maintaining its operational value long after fresh milk, canned dairy, and commercial substitutes disappear. It is food, hydration support, and nutrient reinforcement, compressed into a form that time cannot easily penetrate. Its real strategic value shows when the environment becomes unstable. Powdered milk provides protein, fat, calcium, and calories, nutrients that usually vanish early in a crisis. These are the nutrients responsible for muscle repair, mental clarity, and bone stability during long periods of stress, when your body is pushed into overdrive for days or weeks. When sleep is fragmented and movement is constant, you need more than raw calories. You need structural nourishment. Powdered milk delivers that without demanding refrigeration or specialized equipment. Just water, a container, and discipline. In grid-down life, it transforms basic staples into complete meals. Rice and beans become more sustaining when fortified with milk. Flatbread becomes richer, denser, more filling. Improvised porridges keep children, the elderly, or weakened group members stable. The inexperienced think powdered milk is optional. Those who understand long-term endurance know it's a force multiplier. But powdered milk's strength doesn't end with consumption. It is an asset in stealth cooking. Low scent, low noise, quick preparation. It can be used to stretch other foods, enrich teas or coffees, or create emergency ration blocks that store compactly and hit hard with calories when rapid movement is required. And if your situation escalates into barter, powdered milk becomes one of the most negotiable commodities in the system. Dairy shortages create desperation. Desperation creates leverage. You hold the leverage. Its storage protocol is simple. Keep it sealed, keep it dry, keep it in mylar or cans with oxygen absorbers. Do that, and it becomes a multi-decade reserve that stabilizes your nutritional intake when every external support collapses. Powdered milk doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't glamorize survival. It quietly ensures you don't break down physiologically while everyone else does. In a world where your strength and clarity dictate whether you remain the hunter or become the hunted, powdered milk keeps your foundation intact. Silent, efficient, uncompromising, the ninth forever food is dried corn, a hard, resilient grain that outlives systems, storms, economies, and entire civilizations. You don't store dried corn because it's convenient or trendy. You store it because it is one of the few foods that can sit untouched for decades and still deliver dense, reliable calories the moment you decide to mill it, boil it, grind it, or crack it. This is not snack food. It is structural survival food, a base ingredient used by ancient cultures, frontier families, and modern off-grid operators for one reason: it works every time. Dried corn is almost immune to decay when kept dry and sealed. Moisture is the enemy. Oxygen is a slow threat. Solve both, and corn becomes a multi-generational reserve. It survives heat waves, cold snaps, humidity swings, and grid failure without losing its operational integrity. Where soft grains weaken, where processed foods collapse, dried corn remains unchanged, a locked reservoir of calories waiting to be awakened. Its versatility is tactical. Grind it into cornmeal for bread, mush, or tortillas. Crack it for livestock feed if your scenario expands beyond personal survival. Boil it into hominy for long-burning calories. Roast it for portable rations. With the right tools, you can convert a single sack into dozens of meal types, each one stable, filling, and low scent, ideal for stealth operations when you cannot risk attention. But dried corn also carries psychological and historical weight. It is a survival constant. Societies have risen and fallen with it in their granaries. When everything else disappears from your pantry, corn remains a symbol of endurance, a reminder that survival is not about luxury, but continuity. And in long-duration emergencies, continuity becomes your strongest weapon. In barter networks, dried corn becomes strategic currency. It is tangible, heavy, clearly valuable. Unlike powdered goods or liquids, its worth is obvious even to the untrained eye. That means fewer negotiations, fewer explanations, more control. You decide what it's worth and to whom it goes, if it goes anywhere at all. Storage is simple. Seal it in mylar, eliminate oxygen, protect it from moisture. Do this once and you create a supply that can outlast most modern households' food stores combined. Dried corn won't impress anyone on day 1 of a crisis. But on day 300, day 600, year 5, it becomes the difference between barely surviving and sustaining with confidence. This is not just food. It is a foundation. A fortress disguised as a grain. The 10th forever food is baking soda, a substance so unassuming that most people overlook its role in survival entirely. But you won't. Because you understand that collapse strips life down to fundamentals, and baking soda is a fundamental disguised as a household afterthought. It never expires. It never weakens. It never loses potency. It sits in absolute stasis until the moment you deploy it. And when you do, it becomes more than food. It becomes infrastructure. Nutritionally, baking soda doesn't feed you. Strategically, it keeps you functioning. When your diet becomes heavy with grains, beans, dehydrated rations, and improvised meals, your body's pH balance takes a hit. Acidity builds, digestion slows, fatigue climbs. In a high-stress survival scenario, that imbalance sabotages you from the inside out. A small amount of baking soda dissolved in water restores equilibrium, reduces acid load, and stabilizes your system when you can't afford physical misfires. Clarity and endurance come from internal balance, not bravado. But baking soda's real power emerges when the modern world vanishes. It becomes a cleaning agent, a deodorizer, a water decontaminator, a fire suppressant, a hygiene stabilizer, and a tool for extending the life of other supplies. When soaps run out, baking soda steps in. When you need to scrub cookware without wasting precious water, baking soda handles it. When off-grid odors threaten stealth, baking soda neutralizes them. When acidity spikes in stored foods or improvised recipes, baking soda corrects it. One substance, dozens of uses. Every use protects your energy, your resources, or your concealment. In water treatment, a pinch of baking soda can adjust taste and balance after purification. In cooking, it tenderizes grains and beans, reducing fuel time and conserving your limited fire resources. In medical improvisation, it becomes an antiseptic rinse, a burn soother, a bite neutralizer. You don't rely on it as medicine, but you exploit its chemistry when the environment leaves you no alternative. In barter scenarios, baking soda becomes a sleeper commodity. While others trade canned goods and perishables, you trade function, cleaning, hygiene, food prep, water support, odor control. People underestimate these needs until they fail to address them. Then desperation begins. You won't be desperate. You'll be the one holding the compound that solves problems silently and efficiently. Baking soda doesn't make noise. It doesn't rot. It doesn't attract pests. It simply exists, waiting for the moment everything else collapses. And when that moment comes, you won't view it as a kitchen product. You'll view it for what it truly is: chemical resilience held in the palm of your hand. The 11th forever food is pasta, a compact, silent, highly efficient carbohydrate reserve that becomes a long-term power source when sealed against moisture and oxygen. Most people treat pasta as comfort food. In survival logic, it is controlled fuel, stable, stackable, lightweight, and nearly immortal when stored correctly. Pasta does not spoil. It does not degrade in flavor or structure for decades. It requires no refrigeration. It only demands one thing: that you keep it dry. Do that, and it becomes one of the highest value ration expanders in your entire arsenal. Its tactical strength lies in its simplicity. Pasta cooks fast, uses minimal fuel, and creates low scent signatures, critical when you must stay hidden or limit smoke. It delivers dense, clean carbohydrates that sustain long patrol cycles, relocation efforts, barrier building, or night operations when your body burns energy at abnormal rates. Unlike breads or fresh grains that mold or spoil, pasta remains inert, quiet, operational. When water is rationed, it still functions. When fuel is scarce, it remains practical. When the grid is gone, pasta doesn't notice. But the true strategic advantage is how pasta multiplies food. A handful becomes a full meal. It extends sauces, soups, scraps, powdered mixes, canned proteins, even foraged greens. You turn minimal resources into substantial meals, preserving your higher-value foods for when the environment becomes more hostile. In long-duration emergencies, this ration-stretching ability becomes a survival superpower. You eat more for less. You waste nothing. You stay stronger than those burning through their supplies too quickly. Pasta also supports stealth cooking. It produces almost no aroma, a hidden benefit when starving individuals or hostile actors track smells in the dark. A pot of boiling water reveals nothing of what you're making or what you have stored. And when combined with powdered milk, lentils, dried herbs, or canned protein, pasta becomes adaptable enough to prevent taste fatigue, a psychological threat many preppers underestimate. Morale is fuel. Flavor is leverage. Even small improvements keep your mind sharp. In barter dynamics, pasta outperforms expectations. It's recognizable, measurable, divisible, and universally appreciated. It signals value without signaling luxury. Unlike rice or beans, pasta often appears scarce in crisis zones because households consume it early. That scarcity amplifies its trade power later in the collapse. You hold what others ran out of. That imbalance is control. Store it in mylar. Keep oxygen out. Keep moisture away. Once sealed, pasta becomes a decades-long ally. Always ready, always reliable, never compromised. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic. But it is endurance in its purest edible form. And endurance is survival. The 12th forever food is pure rendered fat. Tallow. Not oil, not butter, not trendy health products that turn rancid within months. Tallow is ancient survival engineering, a substance that remains stable for decades when kept cool, dark, and sealed. Civilizations were built on it. Explorers crossed continents with it. Armies marched on it. And when society collapses, tallow becomes the one form of fat you can trust. The form that will not betray you with spoilage, mold, or chemical breakdown. Most people's food stores collapse because they ignore fat. They stock rice, beans, grains, but they forget the nutrient that fuels the brain, stabilizes hormones, prevents starvation mode, and allows long-term physical exertion. Without fat, your endurance dies. Your clarity dies. Your body cannibalizes itself. But tallow closes that weakness. It is concentrated, dense, and metabolically efficient, a slow-burning fuel source that keeps you sharp during prolonged stress cycles. Its tactical value extends far beyond nutrition. Tallow is fire starter, candle fuel, lubricant, rust prevention, leather conditioner, and cooking medium. One jar becomes a toolkit. When your environment strips away conveniences, tallow fills gaps no other food can fill. Melt a small amount, and you have a nearly smokeless cooking fat, essential for stealth operations where rising scents or visible smoke put you at risk. Mix it with dried meat and grains, and you've recreated pemmican, the most durable survival ration in human history. Soldiers, trappers, and nomads lived months on it. You can too. Tallow requires almost no maintenance. It doesn't need refrigeration. It doesn't degrade under temperature swings. It holds its structure and potency across seasons and disasters. This is why early survivalists carried pouches of it alongside weapons and tools, because tallow is a tool, a resource, a line of defense against starvation fatigue. And in barter, tallow becomes untouchable. Most households won't have any. Many don't even know what it is. When collapse deepens and people realize they need fat to stay alive, you become the gatekeeper. Fat is always the first macro to disappear from pantries. You'll have a supply that others can't manufacture without livestock, equipment, skill, and fire. Trade only if it strengthens your position, because those who control fat control survival. Rendered correctly, sealed properly, and stored with discipline, tallow is nearly immortal. It outlasts oils, it outlasts butters, it outlasts the unprepared. It is the oldest survival nutrient on Earth, and the one most likely to keep you operational when every other system fails. You've now assembled what most people will never understand. A pantry engineered for collapse, not convenience. 12 forever foods, each one chosen for endurance, density, stability, and tactical flexibility. This is not the kind of stockpile that panicked crowds throw into carts when the shelves start emptying. This is a controlled system, a defensive perimeter made of calories, chemistry, and time. Where others collect groceries, you collect leverage. Where others wait for help, you eliminate dependence entirely. These foods don't just sit on shelves, they hold the line. Honey that doesn't rot, rice that doesn't break down, beans that don't surrender to age, salt that outlives civilizations, sugar that never spoils, maple syrup that endures the seasons untouched, lentils that cook fast and hit hard, powdered milk that turns scarcity into nourishment, dried corn that survives like stone, baking soda that replaces entire departments of modern life, pasta that multiplies meals, tallow that fuels both body and fire. Each item extends your timeline, pushes the moment of vulnerability farther away until it becomes irrelevant. People like to believe collapse is a movie scene, sudden, loud, catastrophic. But real collapse is slower, quieter, and far more dangerous. Systems degrade, trust fractures, resources thin out. The unprepared wait, hoping support will return. It won't. The world doesn't rewind, it resets. And only those who fortified themselves early become the ones who endure the reset without fear. Your pantry is no longer a kitchen space. It's an operational asset, a buffer between you and desperation, a barrier between your household and the chaos outside. Every jar, every sealed bag, every bucket represents time, and time is the most valuable resource in any crisis. Time to plan, time to relocate, time to fortify, time to stay invisible while others become targets. This doctrine is simple. When you control your food, no one controls you. When you eliminate hunger, you eliminate leverage. When you extend your survival timeline, you dictate the pace of conflict. Not the environment, not the crowd, not the crisis. 12 foods. One outcome. You stay operational while the world buckles. When collapse arrives, slow or sudden, you won't fear it. You'll meet it with a full pantry, a clear mind, and the quiet confidence of someone who already did the work. Someone who cannot be starved into compliance. Someone who cannot be cornered by scarcity. Someone who survives because they prepared long before the rest understood the rules. This isn't luck. This isn't chance. This is strategy. And now you have the advantage.